Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition, the second edition of In the Prog Seat. And today we've got a new cast here on the show, right? Like I said, this Tuesday night In the Prog Seat show is going to be kind of like a revolving cast of some favorites here. We've got a couple of new faces, one who you've seen before. Everybody watches the show, though. We've got Rand Kelly. We've got Rick LeBont, and we've got Sean Tonar. Sean Tonar also has his own show. Sean, you want to briefly talk about what you've got going on your channel?
Well, thanks. Thank you, Pete. And thank you for having me as a guest. It's really good to come hang out with you. Yeah, I have a show. It is a musical talk show podcast that you can watch or listen to, or both. It's called Soul Night Live. And SOAL stands for Story of a Life, because every show is biographical in nature, whether it's about an artist or a band or even a genre. So we do we speak with a lot of progressive rock artists, fusion artists, but I also talk with some classic rock people and some classic pop members. I've spoken with people from Blue Oyster Cult and Jellyfish, for those kind of bands. And I've also had a lot of different prog luminaries on. This past week, had a great chat with David Sanctius, who, played with Sting, and he also played with Peter Gabriel. And he did some amazing fusion albums of his own with group Tone in the 70s that I adore. And coming up, I have Jerry Goodman from the Mahavishnu Orchestra coming up.
Wow, very cool.
Next. And this weekend, I'm chatting with Humphreys McGee drummer Chris Myers. On the side, he has a smoking fusion group called Kick the Cat. So we're going to chat with the Kick the Cat members. So yeah, and it's all over at YouTube. If you just search Soul Night Live, you'll see all past episodes. Check it out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us here, Sean. We really appreciate it. Good to have you.
My pleasure.
Today's topic on episode number 2 of In the Prog Seat is all about, and I have to say, this is for me very close to my heart, because for those of you who have followed this channel know that throughout like the late 70s and all through the 80s, Mr. Pardo here was a big metalhead and hard rock guy. That's what I was into. But I always liked a lot of the classic prog bands, but it wasn't until like the 90s started when metal kind of went into the underground, obviously grunge and alternative and hip hop and rap and dance music and all that kind of stuff became the norm. And the heavy stuff that I loved kind of was swept under the rug, and a lot of those bands started doing other things and whatnot. And I got really turned off from what was going on in the industry, and I rediscovered my love for prog rock, but specifically thanks to a lot of bands that were popping up from all over the world doing this kind of new wave of progressive rock, or as Rand mentioned before we went on the air, the third wave. We had the classic bands from the late 60s, early 70s. We had the what we now call the British neo-prog movement of the 80s. And then the 90s, you had bands from Scandinavia and the UK and Japan and Germany and the US, all over the place, coming out with progressive music once again. So I got completely swept up in all of that. And I started listening to a ton of different bands from all over creation. And I was like, wow, there's like a movement happening here. So when I asked these folks here to join this particular episode, I said to them, let's talk about like maybe 5 albums. If we have time for a couple honorable mentions, we'll do that as well. 5 albums from 5 bands who kind of really hit it in the 90s that made you stop and say, wow, prog is back. I'm loving this. I want to hear more. So Rand, I'm going to have you start off. We're going to go Rand, Rick, Sean, myself, and then we'll keep going around as we go through the album. So Rand, throw an album out here that in a band that got you all wrapped up in prog once again in the 90s.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot. I saw the band the singer was in 1986 in San Francisco, and they just blew my mind. Huge fan. I'm not going to tell you yet who it is. And then all of a sudden, he's gone, and they got a new singer, and the whole style of the music changed. I don't hate them now, but I like them better with the original singer. And then he put out a solo album 3 years after he left in 1990, where all this starts. And it's Here Comes Fish. Vigil in the Middle Wilderness of Mirrors. I love this album so much. 1990, and it just like it sounded like the next Marillion album after Clutching at Straws. It just was so good. And my friend Bill, who passed away in 1999, said that with Season's End, he listened to it and he goes, the season ended. He goes, I'm done. But he liked Brave, so, he gave him a shot. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good, because I turned my dinger off so it wouldn't make any noise. But anyways, yeah, there's some really good songs on here. Big Wedge was a single in England and it did some damage over there and stuff. I like the company's really good, and it's got a really nice poster. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a little poster in the CD.
Yep.
And then there's another tune, A Gentleman's Excuse Me, which is just gorgeous, real nice, soft song. And then the funniest song on the album is The Voyeur, I Like to Watch, which is like if you took the Hollies, Look Through Any Window, and just absolutely made it like Zappa would have redone it. It's pretty bizarre. And then the Family Business is just shocking song. It's about spousal abuse. I couldn't believe it. And then it ends with View from the Hill. And then what's that last song called? Cliche.
Yeah, Cliche.
Just such a good album.
Yeah.
Really enjoy it. And I listened to it the other day. I hadn't heard it in 30 years. And what a refreshment. I'm so glad we're doing these albums. And that's my pick.
Cool.
First
That's a
pick.
great one. That's a great one. There are a lot of people today who still cite that as their favorite Phish solo album.
Well, Seeing Marillion was fantastic. And we were standing in line in front of the Fillmore, and this big tall guy walks right by us, and Bill goes, "That's Phish." And nobody thought to talk to him because he just sort of wandered through the crowd. He never said any word to anybody.
Yeah.
He's tall.
He is big. I've run into him twice. And I've seen him twice solo, and before both shows, I ran into him at the bar I was at before the show, and he's just hanging out, and he's very approachable. I saw him on the buffet line at one place. It was like a club that had a buffet going at the same time, and I see this guy in front of me. He's got the big jacket on. He's big, tall, and he's just standing there putting all this food on his plate, and I'm like, when is this guy going to be done? And I look up, I'm like, oh, it's like, sorry, you can take as much as you want, man. How are you, Phish? Looking forward to the show, right?
He taking it backstage.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, Rick, what's your first choice of the day here?
Well, Rand, that was a good choice because that was on my list.
Thank you,
Just
Rick.
leave that. Good thing Pete tell us to come up with some backup just in case. Great mind think alike, my friend. Well, let's give a little quick background because in the 90s, I'm 20 years old, okay? And so most of my album collection, I started when I was about 8, 9, 10. Spent most of my allowance, and I always had a job as a teenager. So why I'm telling you this, because by 1990, 1991, and 92, I spent 3 years catching up of all the stuff that had on vinyl and cassette to replace them on CDs. From here on in, 88 on, I bought nothing but CDs. So I had to get all my Uriah Heep, the Led Zeppelins, and all the stuff that I already have that I worship religiously. But along the way, it got me to search for more prog. And in the late 80s, there was some warning signs that things were coming, like Metallica picked Justice for All, that kind of had a little proggy moment. I was hearing about, all kinds of buzz about Queen's Right on the magazine. They talked about King Jack. They talked about this band called Dream Theater. And that's my first pick because by the time I got to 92 and I was catching up, and I was buying the things that were coming out that, presently, Tesla or Ozzy or nothing, but I didn't know about any new band that were doing prog. And it was a magazine that was hyping up about the progressive rock movement. They didn't call it prog rock. They call it progressive rock / metal movement. And I read a good article about it, and it had this band on it. So I joined Columbia House for like the 20,000th times or something like that. And it was for catching up all those CDs, but I left a couple to buy new things just to take a chance. And the one I took a chance is only because I heard about Dream Theater title. I thought I would get into called Awake. I didn't know. At the time, I didn't know. There's my first introduction. I didn't hear Pull Me Over like everybody else on the moon did. I heard this album by chance. And I really was blown away because most of the potential prog metal that was coming in the late 80s didn't have keyboards. Like they always had 3 guitar players or whatever. And so I was really digging the fact, and this is a great album, especially with the instrumentals they had and how they can be bombastic at one point and so delicate in another part. But the musicianship that blew my mind away, obviously, was and that became a fan. And it's just sort of how to put it, reassure my faith in the band. This wasn't just a one album wonder. Is when I got the next one with the same thing. I got this the same. By the time I was end of the Columbia House orders, I had to get another one. And when I saw that they could put an album out and have a half an hour side of 23 minutes long, just like Yes did was Closer to the Edge or 2112. They're the new kids in town. From everything that they did, I started following them from here on out. So that's what I want to start with, is Dream Theater. They're the one that put it on the radar screen for me.
Can't argue that. Can't argue that. Sean, what do you got? Sean, you sound like you're muted.
That's better.
There we
You
go.
know, My
There we
cat,
go.
my cat was trying to claw her way under the door, so I turned it down. But she's gone now. Good. I was just going to say that one from Dream Theater was number 5 on my list. But I can swap something else out in that spot. But I agree. I really like that. You know, that album was the first time Petrucci used the 7-string guitar, something that Steve Vai had come up with a few years earlier that he used on his Passion and Warfare album. And this was kind of the first metal band that I heard use it. And later that sound became very common. But, you know, in 1992, 91, 89, 90, I guess this album came out in 92. You know, that was fresh. So anyhow, my choice is Hybris from Angleguard. That's, I think, a solid 90s prog classic. And it's, you know, takes its inspiration more from King Crimson and that end of the pond. You know, and lots of mellotrons and great instrumentation, flute and such. So it's not your typical proggy prog. It's kind of a different blend. It's a little more symphonic, but more geared towards classic tones and textures that maybe weren't so prevalent in the early 90s, when it'd be really easy to describe a digital keyboard and conjure up a digital orchestra, which some folks did, but Angleguard didn't. They kind of went back for those old school sounds. And I think that made that album timeless.
Yeah, I would echo everything you just said. This was actually also one of my picks too, and I had a feeling, you know, I picked a whole stack of stuff because I figured we would probably overlap on a few things. If you haven't heard either of the any of the 3 Angleguard studio albums, and you like prog, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, it's unique stuff, and it's beautiful, and it's jarring, and it's exciting, and it's sublime, all in the same song. In
Yeah,
many cases.
yeah. I mean, it's Mellotrons, Hammonds, Moogs, Rickenbackers, all sorts of different types of electric guitars, flute. I mean, instrumental, vocals, doesn't matter. It's all great. And, you know, you listen to it and you can tell the love they had for bands like Tull and Genesis and Yes and the Moody Blues and all that kind of stuff. But yet they sound completely original. And yeah, that's a great choice. You know, got to have it. So, all right. So for my first pick, let's see, where do I go here? All right. I have a feeling I may steal this from one of you guys, but what are you going to do? A little band from Pennsylvania who actually had 2 albums before this one, which nobody heard. But then all of a sudden they got signed to a major label and released As the World. The band is called Echoland.
Love it. That was on my list. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this again, Sean, you mentioned timeless about Angleguard. I think this is a pretty timeless album too. And I think the album that came right before it also is just as good.
Suffocating the Bloom. Yeah.
Yeah, Suffocating.
Great one.
You can't go wrong with either one of them. And As the World, I remember the first time I heard this, I was like, wow, that's quirky. It's catchy. It's melodic. It's pretty challenging, right? And great use of vocals. And, you know, the band are obviously big fans of Gentle Giant, a band that I'm sure everybody on this call probably loves, and myself included. And but, you know, when this came out, a lot of people who were starting to get into this type of music, and especially old school prog fans, were like, yes, the next big saviors. They're on a major label. They're going to do big business. And Sony didn't know what the hell to do with these guys. And before you know it, they're dropped from the label. And, you know, and it really hurt the band, because I think it put a kind of like a stop on everything they were doing. And they wound up like breaking up for a few years, eventually thankfully got back together and went to release a lot of other really strong albums. But, you know, this is the one that for me, out of the handful of albums that I'm going to be talking about today, this was absolutely, if not the number one, it's the number 2 or 3 album in this movement that just totally grabbed me and said, I love this stuff. I want to hear more.
I
Oh,
bought
yeah.
that album. I bought that album late because of your channel. I watched it. You gave it a review. One of your prog went and bought it because of that. I didn't even hear it in Canada or in US. But what a shame, because that band really had a lot of potential. They just didn't know what to do with it. Instead of giving them free reign like they did with Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer in the 70s, that was the culture that would do that. In the 90s, they wanted commercial value. And that was
They wanted, you know, this, I mean, that was released when all, you know, alternative and grunge are all
Yes.
sorts of popular and stuff. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I think they were just a little too eclectic. They didn't quite know what to do
Good
with them.
time, yeah.
You know, Dream Theater did well in the 90s because of their metal roots and their metal underpinning.
Yeah.
You know, metal didn't really go out of style, you know, to its fans. So they, you know, that's kind of how they got through there, I think, while other bands that were a little more eclectic and not heavy per se, and the labels didn't know what to do with them. So
Yeah.
it's a shame, but
It is.
Yeah.
But like I said, at least they're still with us today, and that's a good thing. So
yeah, they're still making great stuff. They have a new album that probably will come out this year. I know
Yeah.
it's pretty much done, and it
Yeah.
has like a
Long time.
20-minute epic on it. So bring it on.
that's right. Rand, back to you. If you got a comment on Eklund, go for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just was gonna say I started with that album when it came out, and yeah, it was mind blowing. My drummer Bill, he told me that 550 Records was owned by Michael Jackson, that he was in charge of that whole thing. So he must have signed them. You just have to wrap your head around that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, they're great. I found out about them through the Frogfest '94 concert, and then I bought it, and I got the VCR tape later on, and to see them live they got a DVD that's called Stars and Gardens, which is
That's great.
just phenomenal.
Awesome.
Sean, do you remember the show at oh boy, I'm gonna say it was Nearfest 2, where they played at Crocodile Rock down in the basement? Did you go to that? It
I
was
don't
like a
think I
Friday
saw
night
that
show.
one. I don't think I saw that. I saw the one where they played May in its entirety.
Yeah, I was at that one too.
For the
Yeah, I think
first
I'm
time
pretty sure it
ever.
was Nearfest 2. They it was them and God, I don't remember the other band. It was an international band. Did the Friday night pre-show, and it was at the Crocodile Rock Club down in the basement room, and it was like a million degrees in there, and the place
I
was
heard
packed.
about that.
And it
Yeah.
was so much fun. I mean, I spent the whole night, you know, we were drinking beers all night and we're right in front of the stage. I mean, it was literally just the whole night standing right in front of the stage. It was so much fun.
Oh,
But
they're
it was
just
good
so
to see him
amazing.
come back a bunch of years later. So
Rand had mentioned the Stars and Garden DVD. I wanted to point out that there is one song, the closing song on this album, I think is one of the most eloquent tunes ever written about passing on. It's called, what is it called? It's totally escaping me now.
Oh, it's such a
never
great
Never
song.
the same.
Never the same. Yeah. And
Never the same. Yeah.
the acoustic
Beautiful.
version on Stars and Gardens just tears my heart out in such a good way. You know, it's so sparse, and man, you know, that's the one I want them to play at my funeral, but no hurry.
Yeah, exactly.
Been so long since I heard that record.
Oh man.
All right, Rand.
I ended up getting just one more thing on Eklund. The one you showed, Pete, they have a reissue like with the DVD, which is worth getting. So you might want to look, and it's a remaster too, so it's worth getting. It's got a different cover.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this sort of the band just sitting somewhere in the Pennsylvania countryside on a fence or something, or a wall. I can't remember, but anyway, it's got a great DVD with it, so it's worth getting.
Cool.
Sweet.
Okay, my turn.
Yes.
Okay. In night, I'm kind of going in chronological order. So in 1991, Nobody Can Find Any Prog, Yes puts out Union, and then everybody finds out that half of it's not even Yes. it's all these session musicians from LA. So it's like they just got it tanked. The tour was great. I saw it twice in the year. But looking around for Prague, I was in a store in Eureka, California, and it was called The Warehouse. You ever heard of that?
No.
Was that a franchise? Okay. Well, anyways, the guy that ran it or was working there, I knew really well as a friend, and I played music with him. And I picked up this album, the CD out of the rack. And I go, "Do you know anything about this? It looks kind of proggy." And he didn't like prog. His favorite music was Elvis Presley. And he said, "We're not even supposed to have that. I don't know how that got in here." And it was Magellan, Hour of Restoration,
Oh, nice.
1991. This is such a everything these guys did is so good, but this was like mind-blowing music because it sings about the Magna Carta, which is on Magna Carta Records. I mean, I love Magna Carta Records. I bought a lot of stuff from them. You could do a whole show on those guys, Pete.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, this album got endorsed by Ian Anderson. He said something good about the band, and apparently he named them Magellan. They were called something else before that. And I don't remember now, it was a stupid name. But the Gardner brothers, Trent and Wayne, just had a drum machine. And this stuff is like so good. It's like everything you ever wanted out of a prog band. You know, I go, oh, that sounds like Kansas. That sounds like Dream Theater. That sounds like this. That sounds like that. You know, you're just like, it's unbelievable. And it's just so sad what happened to this band. I don't want to get into it too much, but just put it this way, there will never be another Magellan. They come and gone.
Yeah.
And I love this record. It's like going to school and learning while listening to prog, because the lyrics are all about teaching, if that makes any sense. But
Great
Yeah.
and
bands.
they never toured. They never
Yeah.
toured.
No, they
never
did. We're
went
not a
out.
live band. No, not at
They
all.
did not, and neither did. But I love Kyra too. So
I'd like to point out an offshoot of that Trent did with Steve Walsh, Steve Walsh's Glossolalia album from the early
Mhm.
2000s.
It's a good one.
I
Yeah.
think it's his finest hour as outside of Kansas, easily.
Mhm.
And Trent has a heck of a lot to do with it. So if y'all haven't
Oh,
heard
yeah.
the album, Steve was very much into Tool at the time, and it's very heavy. It's heavier than any Kansas album you've
Oh, yeah.
heard. And
It's
and
an angry
really,
album too.
yeah, really cool stuff.
He has a couple
Trent-
good solo albums.
Yeah, he does.
Trent was doing collaborations with Chicago, Robert Lamb, and those guys before they all, like the Gardners perished. But it's kind of sad. But anyways, the stuff he did with Robert Lamb and Chicago is really good.
Love them.
Yeah, well, I listen. Magellan also is on my larger list here. That I listened to all of those albums, and I remember, and Rand brings up a good point. I think one of the labels that was so important to everything we're talking about was Magna Carta Records. I mean, you got to give them a ton of credit for throwing out and signing all these bands and releasing all these albums. And I'm sure we'll talk about a few more today. But I bought everything that came out on Magna Carta Records. Everything.
They had a great roster, and then, they were the label for more well-known stuff in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Well, that was Mike Barney and that other guy with all the shrapnel stuff and those shredders. That's who created Magna Carta.
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's what I like about the prog community. When you buy a CD, they often have a catalog of other CDs from other bands in the liner note that you will pull out, and you will discover other bands. I took some chances that way. I said, hey, this band is pretty interesting, and that's what I've done. In fact, that's how I discovered this one. I went to see Rush do the concert for Counterparts, and they're back with guitars and everything, and I was so excited, and I was very proud of them. And I'm talking to a fan about this at the concert, and he said, hey, if you like this kind of music, have you check out this guy? Have you check out this guy? And this is one of them that he recommended. I was in Detroit at the DTE Energy Music Theater waiting for us to come on, and he told me about this. You got to write this down. So I actually literally, back in the day, you had the pager. I text the name of the band onto my pager so I wouldn't forget, because that'd be hours before I go home. And I bought this, and I was so excited. Not only this would be the birth of the group Flower Kings after this, but I thought this was so deep, thought-provoking, and and happy and you know, optimistic, very much like John Anderson. No surprise to me that you get this guy and Neil Morse, and they're gonna write about good things in life and have you look at, you know, things in color instead of everything black and white and so gray and dark. That's what my first impression about this band was. Not only this album, I should say, was that not only the songs are well constructed and all the magicianship that show the finest hour and everything they do, but it was a happy album. It was a positive album. And, you know, with grunge was so negative. Grunge is everybody want to jump off a bridge or something. And it was nice to have something like this where everybody's being a little more positive. And so it's no surprise why they would make a good band later on, Transatlantic, with that kind of ideology. But this was the birth of the Flower Kings after that. From here on in, they got so much respect for this album. He had to take that music on the road and not form a band, and ultimately made many great albums after that. So that's my second choice, my friends.
Yeah, he's very
Nice, Rick.
consistent. Very consistent. You know, their new album's getting a lot of great reviews too. So
Yeah,
Do you
it's
see the size of this thing?
Yes, I can.
that's what she
It's
said.
huge, huh? It's pretty rare, I think. But this friend of mine named Dan Bobrowski gave me this when I met him in Modesto as I was coming back from Los Angeles. I think it's awesome. I don't know, it's pretty rare, I guess. It's got a triple kind of fold up thing.
Oh wow, cool.
Wow,
It's
nice.
like really cool. So
It's
Anyway,
really good.
yeah.
And you know, I think Rick brings up a good point. There's like an uplifting nature or elements of the Flower Kings music, and especially that debut solo album there. It's almost like spiritual in nature, but it's really not. That's kind of the vibe you get from it. It's really it's kind of happy music. I don't know. I listen to the Flower Kings, I'm like, and it's just like kind of like sweeps you up and takes you away in a good way. And I find all their albums are like that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I see a similarity with the positivity of Modern Yes as well, especially
I
the
agree.
90s stuff when
Yep.
John was singing about a lot of those themes. And just their harmonic vocabulary is very upbeat and majory and happy, you know, and it comes as no surprise that John Anderson wound up doing an album with Roina, you know, Invention and
Perfect.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
Excellent, you know, excellent
Yep.
return to form for John Anderson after a long bout with respiratory issues.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's a good album too.
So
All
my
right,
turn?
Sean. Yeah, your turn,
Okay.
Sean.
All right. You know, one of the first bands that I got into outside of what I call the big five, the obvious choices, ELP, yes, Genesis, Gentle Giant, and King Crimson, was Ozric Tentacles. And, you know, if you're a fan of spacey kind of rock, a la Gong, in their U era, Angel's Egg, that kind of stuff, this is like the direct descendant of that. And it's it's more about arrangements that flow like a wave that washes over you that you ride. It isn't about all these crazy changes and all that. There are changes, but it feels good when it happens, I guess. And yeah, Erpland's the first one that I got, and they've done a string of albums. You know, they're a bit like space rock AC/DC in that regard. You know, it's like they have a similar vibe. So I don't know if I'd collect them all, but I have several, and you know, Ed does some consistently good work, you know, and they're still, I think they have a recent album called Paper Monkeys or something in the last
woo,
year or two.
yeah.
Can't remember, but Erpland, yeah, that's the one that kind of got me going, especially that tune on there called The Eternal Wheel, which is one of their greatest. And they're really great live too. It's the only gig I've ever been
Amazing
to.
live. It's so much fun.
Yeah, really, really. It's not your typical symphonic prog at all, but it hangs well in the family anyway, I think.
Yeah, it's to me. I mean, and you're right. They've got like a million albums. They're kind of like the U.S.'s answer to Hawkwind, sort of, right? I mean, it's
I can see
kind
that,
of
yeah.
you know, traveling similar avenues and whatnot. But Erpland is great. Was it Jurassic Shift is great. I've got probably like 8 or 10.
Yeah, Waterfall Cities, that's one of my favorites.
I don't know if I've ever heard that one.
Oh, that's killer. You'll like
Yeah,
it.
I mean, there's
They're,
so
all-
many.
they're all good.
Yeah, everyone I've heard is good. I mean, the guitars are great, all the different synths and stuff like that, and the rhythms. And sometimes they kind of move into this like ambient trance thing going on,
They also have their kind of ethnic, kind of Middle Eastern-y kind of sound and stuff
Yeah,
going on
yeah.
sometimes too.
Yeah,
Really
really good.
cool.
That's a great band. And yeah, they're amazing live if you ever get a chance to see them. So, all right.
Very nice there. Well, pour yourself a bowl of those, Rand.
They got sued. They got sued by Kellogg's for this picture.
God,
Not
like Kellogg's.
surprising.
What is Kellogg's worried about?
Yeah,
Kellogg's cornflakes. I don't even know how they found out about them.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody knows who Andre Tentacle. I've seen them twice. They're phenomenal.
All right, my next choice here is
Great stuff.
Oh, can I? Oh, is it my turn?
right
not
after
much.
me. Right after me, Rancy. Rand is so busy walking around his house, he lost track of the order.
This is
Rand,
5
Rand
cent
is like the
tour.
traveling man during this show.
I carried you guys with me though. I didn't leave you behind.
That's right. That's right.
That's a good
No
thing.
prog man left behind.
Okay, I want to see all your wallpaper by the time we're done.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, I'm in my bedroom. I know.
So you have a little band from the UK, right? A little band from England. I love these guys, and Rand was talking earlier about Fish leaving Marillion, and a lot of us big Marillion fans were very disappointed, and maybe some of us, not as much into the Hogarth era Marillion music that came afterwards. Well, for me, this band appeared on the scene and basically scratched that itch for me, and I've been listening to them ever since. And for me, they took that early Fish era sound into the 90s. I'm talking about Arena, Songs from the Lion's Cage. And early on they had like a different singer on almost every album. So they had lineup changes, for a bunch of years, but they then settled down for quite a while. But this is Mick Pointer's band, also originally drummer in Marillion, Clive Nolan on keyboards, and the various other guys who joined the band afterwards. But that was the mainstay of the original band, and just fantastic symphonic, heavy hitting British prog rock. Again, if you love 70s Genesis, early 80s Marillion, and maybe IQ, think of that, maybe a little heavier, big dramatic emotional vocals, loads of guitars, loads of keyboards, anthemic choruses. I absolutely love this album and most of the stuff they've ever done. So that's my next pick.
Is it safe to say there's no arena rock on the Arena album?
No, I wouldn't say so. Not quite, but it's all big and symphonic and just like, in your face type.
Darn it. Well, I'll save my Bic lighter for later then.
Okay. There you go.
Hey, Pete, I got a little tiny story. You guys, I mean, not just Pete, but I can see Pete. Well, that's why I said, hey, Pete. I got my copy from Clive Nolan. He handed it to me when I was at ProgFest 95 to see Pendragon. He was talking to me about, have you heard the Arena album? And I go, who's Arena? He goes, that's my other band. And I go, no, I didn't even know anything about him. And he goes, wait right here. And he goes up to his hotel room and he comes back and he signs it for me and gives it to me.
Nice.
He's a really nice guy. Really nice. They were hanging out with Pendragon at night after everybody played and stuff was so much fun. November, it's LA. And I'm sitting there with Nick Barrett and Peter G and Clive Nolan and just having a ball talking about music and stuff. They were pushing one of their friends' band. I can't remember the name of it. Started with an M. Somebody's something, and it had 2 words. Oh God, I can't think of it. Mariah's something. Anyway, it didn't matter. I'm going down a blind alley right now.
Clive Nolan for a while there was like one of the busiest guys in Prague for like the most of the night.
Oh yeah.
Every time he turned around, he was doing
unbelievable.
something else. It's like crazy.
Exactly. Joining this band, joining that. Shadowlands is awesome. He does all the lead singing.
Forgot about them. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right, Rand, what's your
Oh, it's my turn. Oh God, what do I do? Well, speaking of ProgFest 95, there was another band that was there that from Italy, and probably I know it's not going to be duplicated, so that's why I grabbed it. But it's unbelievable group. These guys, it's hard to describe these guys. I'm just going to show you the cover and see if anybody says anything.
I know this.
Oh yeah.
I know this. Yes.
Deus Ex Machina
From Italy.
di Repubblica.
Yeah.
This
Good one.
band live was unbelievable.
You're right.
They blew my head off. I mean, I could not believe you've got Italian group with a lead singer singing in
Demetrius.
Latin.
Yeah, Demetrius,
Uh,
right? Wasn't his name? Something like that.
Alberto Pires.
Oh, Alberto. I don't know what I was thinking. Demetrius. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got every one of them to sign this, by the way. And it was the next morning, and I saw him standing in front of the hotel, and I said, "Hey, man, can you sign this?" I just happened to have it on me. But anyways, their singer is unbelievable. He can shoot up to the stratosphere in a heartbeat and never miss a note, but you don't understand a word they're saying. And then they printed all the lyrics in Italian. So he's singing in Latin and it's written in Italian. There's no English anywhere, but
Yep.
the musicianship is just beyond crazy. It's like Frank Zappa and Mr. Bungle and stuff like that on steroids. But it's just unbelievable prog. I just like couldn't get enough. And I ended up getting another one called In Paris, which has a DVD that comes with it. But yeah, I love this Deus Ex Machina from 1995. Bought it right there on the spot from Musea Records. Oh, that's one thing about those prog fests you all know about too, right? That there's vendors everywhere. You can't.
Oh yeah.
I made Greg Walker rich.
Yeah, my wallet.
You and me both, man. Oh, he was at every near him and Ken Golden and Laser's Edge were at, and I mean, Cuneiform, they were all there. I probably would spend like $400 or $500 at every single Near Fest on CDs. Easily.
Oh God.
Every year. I went like 7
Yeah.
years in a row.
Yeah, the only one I didn't pay for was the arena.
I mean, Sean, there were times at Near Fest where it's like, you know, they would announce that they were going to close the doors of the vendor room because a band was going to play. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to go back in yet. Hold on. I'm not done looking. I'm not done buying.
Oh, yeah, the big black box, they call that room. It's just
Oh my God.
massive, you know. What a variety. Yeah, I know.
Oh.
Yeah, I think they always close the room because, you know, the vendors wanted to go watch the show just like
Oh
everyone
yeah, it's
else,
understandable.
you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think maybe once in a while they left it open, but not much. But
Not much. Yeah. Not
Yeah.
too much.
I met Robert Berry while I was shopping at Walker's place, and I bought his solo album, Pilgrimages to a Point, and he wrote in there, "Hush lives."
oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, my band opened
Nice guy.
this fall, or not last fall, the fall before last. Remember Robert did that little tour. Did any of you guys see that?
I did. But
I missed it. Was it 3.2 or something like that?
Yeah. And it's, you know, some music that Keith Emerson had written that hadn't got recorded yet, and put together
Oh yeah,
a crack
sweet.
band, including Jimmy Keegan from Spock's Beard on drums. And yeah, my band opened for them. It was a lot of fun, you know, and it was kind of a retrospective look at Robert's career and different people he played with. Like he played with Ambrosia, and he like
Saw him with Ambrosia.
yeah, he covered Life Beyond LA. That was like his opening cut. And then he did a
Love that.
twisted reworking of Roundabout, which you probably heard on the Tales from Yesterday.
Yes. Yeah, I
tribute
love that.
back in the 90s. Yeah. So yeah. And he's got a new one, 3.2.3 or so. I don't know. There's a little more of that.
Yeah.
that's
I
not-
saw 3.
nice. Nice.
They were really good.
Very cool. All right, Rick, the man with the Sons of
Okay.
Apollo shirt. You are next.
Yes. Oh, yeah. By the way, you did a great job with Mike talking about Mike Portnoy. Did you guys see that video? That
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
one
I
of my
did.
highlights. I've been following the show for at least a couple of years. I think I might be described 2 years, but I followed it a year before that. And needless to say, my bank account shrank a lot since I met Pete Pardo. I was already a collector, but he would get me albums that I didn't even knew. It's just like, I'm a Deep Purple fan like he is. And he mentioned Warhorse and all these bands I never knew. So again, thumbs up. But the interview with Mike was awesome. And just like you, that was my last show before the whole world came to a halt. In fact, Mike was just as friendly. That's a shirt he wore. He recommended me. He wrote me a letter. Wash it. I did. He gave me a drumstick. He gave me posters. He signed all the 3. Well, they had 2 albums and a live album with DVD, and he signed it. But man, I really enjoyed that show because Mike is so passionate, just like Peter. He
Just
has
like
a
me,
show that talked about
I will
vinyl.
tell you, as much as you guys enjoyed watching that show,
Yeah.
how I felt, you know, because I mean, Mike is like a kind of kindred spirit, and he and I talk almost daily now. And I'll say it right now, Mike is coming back on the show in 2 weeks, so stay tuned.
Nice.
Woo!
Yeah, you know, I'm as big of a fan of Mike Portnoy as a music lover and musicologist as I am of his music he's part of.
He's a fan like all of us.
Yes.
He is a deep fan, music nerd collector, just like all of us, and that's the cool thing about him.
Well,
He
I
can
have the
And
tell
you
same.
hear it in the passion, and he's so kind, down to earth. His daughter's named Melody, like mine, and they sing Beatles, name that tune from Beatles. Well, my kid did
Oh, I
that
watched
too.
that.
I took him to see Paul McCartney, so I told him that. But anyway, he was such a down to earth guy. When you think a guy like that could be big headed and difficult because he's so adored and he's so talented, but he appreciate love of music. And I might as well talk about one of his buddies because that's what I'm getting on to next. I'm going in order like you did. This is 1995 when this came out, Spark Beer the Light. And again, it wasn't because if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have known about this because my friend said, hey, you like that? We got to change it. You got to get this one. Now, this is the American group. I said, really? Okay. And so, and ended up being Neil Morris's band that he stayed up to. And my favorite album is Snow, but to pick it in order, this is it. I five songs. Back, and I love. I'm not a little, even more. I'm a singer songwriter, and I love to sing. I can listen to instrumentals. I don't have to hear the singer sing, and I love the way the harmonies and he Neil has an amazing way of making you feel whatever he's writing lyrically. Music's supposed to be what feelings sound like. He interprets that very well. The only thing I thought, though, it must be interesting knowing Neil today. I wonder if he ever was shocked about or regret about cursing on this record. Because in one spot, he tells everybody go, and it's part of the theme. And it's about a person, being frustrated. And he's being an actor, if you will. But most of their music is always very, very, very positive. And I just think that Spark Beard ended up being one of my favorite bands next to Dream Theater and then Flower King. Little did I know into the new century, which we can do a great show on the 21st Century Prague, they would join forces like they have. It just made sense to me. But at the time, I'm 25 years old, guys. I'm digging this and I'm thinking, wow, what else they got with them? And of course, and then, continue. And I'm just, and I had to get all their DVDs, but it makes no surprise to me that Michael Portnoy would want to work with Ronnie and Neil. And you mentioned Pete from Marillion, it's no surprise because those are my favorite bands. In fact, these guys redeemed my faith in Prague because I thought when Fish left Marillion, that might be the end of it. I didn't know if there were going to be bands this creative to make Epic. And I'm so excited. I'm sorry, I'm getting carried away, but I get emotional about this because notice how because just like Prague, you have to listen to the whole album. It's an experience. When I put on Pink Floyd or Genesis or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I don't spot for a song. I just listen to the whole thing. And the same thing with these bands. In fact, some people say, they're getting longer and longer. More, I welcome it. I'm not one of those guys that say, oh, they're so full blown or too big. I just think they put every idea they could into it. And let the editor have that problem to pick that up. I think that's great. I think they do a great job of making songs that can be just as long but interesting all the way. It's so much dynamic in it. You got to appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, well, Sparks Beard threw in those wonderful kind of like Beatles style harmonies, mixed with that eclectic kind of like Gentle Giant sort of thing, which, again, they're big fans as well. And I mean, how tuneful are so many of those Sparks Beard songs? I mean, you get some of those melodies in your head. It's like you can't get them out. And that's what's so great. The music's really challenging, but man, the vocal harmony. I mean, I'm a big fan of Neil's vocals, but you got the backing vocals from the rest of the band, and Nick, and it's just great stuff. I love Sparks Beard. Rand, question or comment?
Yeah. They opened Sunday afternoon at Prague Fest 95. It was their first concert, and I was there right in the middle of the theater, and they were phenomenal, just phenomenal. And they did a lot of songs. I like 3, I think, at least, from Beware of Darkness, plus that tune. And we didn't even know about that at all. We had bought the light while we were there because they were selling it right at that point. But yeah, I was blown away. I said, oh my God. Well, I'd heard the light actually before we went down because they were sending out cassettes called Frog Pest, which is the same bands that were not the same, all the same bands, because Discipline was on there and they weren't part of the show. But they did play the light. I mean, we heard the light before we went down, but that was it. And that was enough. I became a fan just on that one song. Rick's right. They were just like phenomenal. Love that band.
Great
They
band.
were the first 90s prog band that I heard about back in the 90s. You know, I've been reading guitar magazines since I was, 15, but that's where I heard about them. It was like the new wave of modern progressive music. And I
Yep.
went to Tower Records and picked up Day for
5
Night.
years,
That was it.
half of the decade was over when Weird started.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was still kind of pre-internet for me, I didn't
Oh,
really
yeah.
get online until about 99 or so. So just
Dog,
hearing
you gotta go
about
away.
anything modern like that was pretty rare. If I hadn't bought that guitar magazine, it'd probably been another 5 years before I heard of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of like around that time, the big ones that everybody was talking about was Spock's Beard, Ekelin, Glass Hammer a little bit later on,
Flower Kings.
Guard certainly, and the Flower Kings. Those were kind of like the big ones that were getting all the kind of attention at the time.
Yeah, and they kind of stood the test of time. So there was
Yep.
definitely something to that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
All
indeed.
right, Sean, what do you got?
I'm gonna go in a slightly poppy direction. I'm a big fan of great sophisticated pop music, stuff like XTC or even Steely Dan. And Toy Matinee really scratched the itch for me, because Kevin Gilbert's such a brilliant writer, and that album just ticked a lot of the right boxes for me. There's the progressive ambition, but all wrapped up in a really irresistible earworm. Every song was an earworm, and it kind of reminded me of 80s Rabin era Yes in some ways. Like the middle section to Last Playing Out totally makes me think of Rabin. It's that kind of vibe, and I was a big fan of all Yeses, so yeah, this was really up my alley. And the later stuff that Kevin did, I'm a big fan of everything. Thud, I think, is a brilliant album. The Shaming of the True is an epic concept record, and it's just a shame that he isn't here today to talk with us. And I'm sure he would have put out 20 more records by now, and been part of all these amazing bands. Who knows? But one of my favorite 90s prog artists that kind of had one foot in the pop world and one foot in the prog world. And I like that blend. A great deal of 90s prog is all about that balance, I think.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that labeled by many as the artist who was on the path to greatness, that may have brought progressive music into the mainstream, and then he blinked and he was gone, right? It's almost like he was kind of like destined to be the Todd Rundgren of his generation, but it never really worked out that way, unfortunately. Tragic, right?
It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. You just think of all the potential he had, and just great things were right around the corner, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So but still, he left us with a lot of cool stuff, more than a lot of people do. So I'm thankful for that, And if anybody hasn't picked up that Giraffe box set, the group that he was in the 80s, this is fantastic. It's been reissued recently on Kevin's website, and I believe they're working on printing up another batch because this sold out pretty quickly. It has the first 2 albums from Giraffe, well, the only 2. And there's also a DVD that shows a lot of different appearances that they did over the years. There's one particular show, it's like their CD release party, where it's almost the whole set, and just great stuff. Love it.
Very
There's
cool.
a DVD of them Giraffe doing the Lamb Light down on Broadway, most of it,
Yeah.
and from 1994. And I bought it. I'm not sure if it's a bootleg or not, but it's worth having.
Oh yeah, that's great. And that was kind of a reunion in a way, because Kevin had gone on to Toy Matinee, and he brought Stan Cody back to play guitar on The Lamb, which was kind of a nice way of kind of bringing things back together.
Well, I never got to talk to him, but he was running the mixing board for all of ProgFest 95.
Oh, wow. Must have a great ear.
Yeah, somebody said, that's Kevin Gilbert. I go, Don't know who he is.
You will.
Now you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, it would be really bad if I didn't talk about this band, and one of you already has, but I've got to throw it out there because this for me was the most important band for me to really get me into all this stuff. And of course, I'm talking about Dream Theater and Images and Words. You know, I had actually heard their first album when it first came out, because I graduated college in 88, but in 89, I was still going back to school to hang out with my buddies who were still going to school, right? Were like juniors and seniors and whatnot. And I remember I had a ton because, it was upstate New York. So many people I knew were from Long Island. So I was hanging out with a couple buddies of mine who were still going to school and from Long Island. They're like, "Oh, have you heard this great new band from the island called Dream Theater?" I'm like, I never heard Dream Theater. So they played it for me, their first album, When Dream and Day Unite. And I was like, whoa, that sounds like kicked up Rush or something, it was like heavy and complex and really melodic. And I kind of dug it. I wasn't nuts about the singer, but I was like, all right, but the rest of it musically amazing. And then fast forward about like a year and a half later. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I went to live in my parents' house for a brief time. I started working in New York City after I graduated college, and I had this crappy job, and I was commuting back and forth to the city 2 hours every day to go work this job where I made no money. And in the morning, I'm getting ready for work. I'm taking a shower, and I don't know if you guys remember Z-Rock. It was like this syndicated radio show back in the early 90s, all dedicated to hard rock and metal. And I'm sitting there in the shower, and all of a sudden I hear down, 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 down. And then Pull Me Under comes in, and I'm in the shower, and I'm like washing my hair, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? I'm digging it. I'm thinking, I had no idea who it was. Kind of sounded like Fate's Warning, but different, really melodic, really heavy, long song. And at the end, they're like, that's the brand new song from Long Island's Dream Theater from their Images and Words album. And I'm like, that's that band that my buddy told me about from Long Island. So of course, long story short, went out and bought it immediately, fell in love with this album. I mean, most people, consider this one of the greatest progressive metal albums of all time, which really spearheaded a whole other, kind of genre of progressive music. And then a couple of years later, the album that I actually like even more, which is Scenes from a Memory, Metropolis Part 2, one of my favorite concept albums of all time. But yeah, you can't be talking about what we're talking about without the importance of Dream Theater. And for me, it's undeniable. So that's my next choice, Dream Theater. Specifically, I'm going to put both of these two albums. Rand.
Definitely.
Yeah, I got a little comment about that album, Pete, because you're not going to believe this, but Trent Gardner from Magellan called me up because I had signed up for their thing on the back of their CD. And we were talking for about an hour about all this music and stuff. And I go, man, I'm so glad you're bringing prog back. It's like a dead art. It's like there's none in the country and stuff. And he goes, well, I'll tell you something, Rand. We're all putting our hopes and dreams on Dream Theater, Images and Words. If that goes successful, the genre's got a chance, but if it tanks, we're all in trouble. And I couldn't believe
we know what happened, right?
God.
Well. It did pretty well. So yeah, we know what happened.
Yeah. I saw that band on that tour too. And they're phenomenal. I turned my head to the side to talk to my friend, and he goes, "Oh my God, John Petrucci just fell over his monitor," and I missed it. And nobody has a picture of it. It was at the Warfield in San Francisco. He was playing this hot solo, and he was going backwards. He was in front of his monitor, and he literally tripped over it.
And he probably didn't miss a note, tumbling over and everything.
No, because I didn't hear anything different, because I was looking at him and going, these guys are awesome. And he goes, you just missed Petrucci falling over his monitor.
Now, Pete, you see them religiously. Did you see that tour when they did that video for this concert? I know you've seen the score. So you saw that one too.
I've seen every single Dream Theater tour since Images and Words.
Wow.
I've seen them more than any other band. I've seen them multiple times on many tours. I mean, I've said it before, and I was talking to Mike about this, a week and a half ago. One of the things I love about going to see Dream Theater live, especially when Mike was in the band, is that they played a different set list every single night of every single tour. So you could see them 5 nights in a row and travel state to state to go see them, and you knew you were going to get a different set list every night. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Good. I wish that was true with Yes's Union tour, because suddenly that $300 box set they just put out with 30 shows that are bootlegged of the
It's all
exact,
exactly the
I
same.
saw that.
it's like, yeah, I don't know if that's a value, but if they were like,
Yeah, I'm not buying that.
if they were like Dream Theater and played something different every night, we'd be, they take my money.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know too many bands that do that. I know the Black Crowes did that. They change their set list every night, but that is impressive. In fact, it was that DVD that you attended that you were at that show is when I went to buy Pull Me Under. I figured, oh man, I don't have that song. And I went backwards. Like I said, I went from Awake on. I didn't go back because I was told that's a different singer. I didn't know James, a Canadian, is on this album too. So
Yeah.
I was like behind almost by 99. I ended up getting this one because of that DVD.
I think
Wasn't he from that that album, that band out of Canada called Toronto? Isn't that where James LeBrie comes from?
That's a good question. He might be. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Really sure. But yeah, man, I remember when I first heard Images and Words, it was brand new. A musician buddy, a friend of mine who happened to be from upstate New York, brought it over one day and we sat there and listened to the cassette and we just looked at each other and just kind of laughed when we heard some of the things like, can you hear what they're doing? Wow, that's wild. And it was just kind of like a new level. I'd been into Queensryche and Iron Maiden and the like, and this was kind of like that, but taken to a more proggy extreme.
Yeah.
Yes.
And those melodies and hooks, man. I mean, that's the thing. The music was daring, it was heavy, but it was so accessible, right? I mean,
Man,
just
like,
loaded with.
take the time. I mean, that's such an earworm. There's
Yeah.
so much crammed into that song that's exciting from a arrangement standpoint, but at the end of the day, there's just a great hook that
Yeah.
that you never forget.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they're sort of like when Led Zeppelin came out, they had the wow factor of being great magicians. It's like athlete on their instrument. Dream Theater was like that for me when I saw how good they are. Every individual person, there's no weak link. Like there's nobody saying, "Oh, that guy's carrying it for them." No, they are stars. They all were
And
a force to be reckoned.
that bar was getting ratcheted up every decade when it came to chops and ability, and they were at the cutting edge. And what I've
Yeah.
discovered as a guitar teacher is that they've inspired a whole new generation. I mean, I know a lot of 20 somethings that can just play me under the table. And it's just like they set the bar and said, this is how you can do it. And a whole new generation came along and said, yeah, we can.
Yeah, you got these 8-year-olds who are playing Petrucci licks note for note, and it's just like I can't even attempt that. It's like God, but that's right.
You just got to love your own sound, and
that's what it's all about, right?
And I do, so I'm happy being me. But yeah, I can easily find a 5-year-old on YouTube that'll skunk me, but whatever. It just makes my heart, smile to see a young person be that into music and
have that dedication, right?
I wish I was. When I was 5, I didn't even know what color crayon I wanted to use next. Much less shredding on a guitar,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I can't shred. I got 2 words for people that say you don't play fast enough. David Gilmour.
There's a million ways to be great. It isn't
Yeah.
always about dexterity.
No.
It's more
It's about
important.
being
I'd
tasty.
say phrasing is more important than anything.
Yes.
You've got a good, tasteful way to phrase your notes. That's going to draw people in more than the ones that go, "Oh my God, that was fast."
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's gonna age better. I
Make
think,
every
as
note
well.
count.
Yeah, like
really.
Andy Latimer and Camel. That's
There
him.
you go. Yeah, man.
He doesn't ever play a wasted note.
No, he
Doesn't matter how fast or how slow, or it fits everything he does. He's one of my favorite guitar players of all time.
Oh, love him. Yeah,
choice.
Love
absolutely.
that guy.
He's
Good choice.
like I always say he's like Gilmore with a little more chops.
Yeah.
All right, Rand, what's your next choice?
Okay, I'm going to show a picture and see if anybody recognizes. Oops, I made a mistake. Okay, here we go. Can you see this? It's
Yeah.
kinda hard to see.
Is that the Bangles?
No, they're all Japanese.
Oh, I know who that
Oh,
is.
I know who it is.
I know who that is.
Yeah, yeah.
Come on, somebody put it out.
Arsh
Nova.
Nova, is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Okay, the story with this band is, guess what? They opened Prague Fest 95 on Saturday. Nobody knew anything about them. I think we did hear one tune, Trancy on the Frog Pest tape. But they were so nice and they were so good. And it's like when they were done, we actually, a couple of us actually started hanging out with them and tried to talk to them and stuff. And they didn't know English very well. I could tell you this, they loved to party. We went to the Musea room and they partied like crazy. And we listened to a bunch of prog music up there. They love Magma. That's one of their favorite bands. Also turned me on to Il Biletto di Bronzo East
Boleto de
album.
Bronzo, great.
Oh my God, I fell in
Yeah.
love with them. I went over to the Kinetic remember Kinetic
I do.
Reddit record guy, and I bought that CD the very next day. Love that record. Just I don't even mind that they don't sing in English anymore. I mean, if the musicianship is good enough, I just let it all flow over me like a wave.
Yeah, they were like
Yeah.
a keyboard trio like ELP, but with the
Right.
frenetism of like Magma or the Zool, camp. Yeah, they're
Yeah, they're so intense. And I became pretty good friends with Keiko, the keyboard player. And she sent me some really nice stuff like a Christmas card and like recently, and a couple of DVDs that aren't really available for sale. So I've got everything they've ever done, plus a VHS tape of them on the road. And I've got a Prog Day DVD where they did their 1996 show at Prog Day in North Carolina. I love Ars Nova. I bought everything they've ever done. Big fan. And the drummer, Kiko, I told her, I says, oh my God, it's just like watching Bill Bruford on steroids. You're amazing. And she goes, he's my favorite drummer.
of course, right?
Oh yeah, he's mine too. So
I always wanted to go to Prague Day. I always thought that would have been a really nice little excursion. Go sit out
yeah,
in the field. And what was that, North Carolina, South Carolina? I forget.
Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Chapel Hill, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, some guy named Pete Renfro.
Peter Renfro, yeah, he's
Peter
the
Renfro, yep.
Yeah,
With
yeah. He
Michael
sent me
Bennett,
he sent me a VCR tape of the show of Ars Nova, and another band called oh my God, you can say their name, Azigza. It's like you can say it both ways, one way and the other way. Azigza or something. I guess they're from Israel. They were phenomenal.
Hmm.
But yeah, I love Ars Nova. Big fan. That was 1995 when they started kicking it up.
Great choice. Great choice.
Thank you.
Rick, back to you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna pull out this is the limited edition Flower King box set. It's it's called the Kingdom of Colors, and it's from 1995, 2002, and we mastered booklets, all kinds of wonderful stuff with it. And according to my card here, I have the 1,224 version of 3,000 copies of this.
Nice.
Now, the albums I want to pick, because there's so many good ones, but I'm gonna have to pick, I believe they could Pete, one of his favorite too. But it's Stardust We Are. This is like, I'm going in order, 97, thank you, Pete. This is fantastic album. I just thought like, for a double album, it doesn't feel that way. It flies by for me when I put it on. Like I really do. Time goes by. I'm so it's so captivating. It keeps me in my interest the entire ride. And what I love, well, In the Eyes of the World and The Room with a View and all these great songs on here are a must for people to check out. But I just love the musicianship, the artwork, it's really a band feel right through the end. Everybody's like pulling all the, everything they could. They could like a dream theater effort when they put everybody's brains are on the table trying to get the best out of it. I mean, I know a lot of the songs are written by a handful of people, but you can tell that this is a band. They really feel like a band, more so than that first album I showed, obviously. And of course, the momentum they had after that. They're famous for double albums, right? Flower Power, and even the last one. I mean, they just have so many ideas that they never, the wells never dry when it comes to the Flower King, that's for sure. Anyway, this is a great lineup too. This is one of my favorite lineup of the band, where near the last couple albums, I believe. But this is a really good. If anybody want to start anywhere with the Flower Kings, I always recommend this. I really do. I always say, hey, go with this one. If you dig it, then you'll dig the rest. That's what I felt.
It's my favorite Flower Kings album, and you're right. That's probably the classic lineup. I love the Roy Stolt and Hasse Froberg doing the dual vocals thing. I think they work great
Yes.
together.
Me
And
too.
Tomas Bowden is such a great keyboard player, and I've met him. He's such a nice guy and a character. And you got Jamie Salazar in the band, and I mean, it's a really, really great lineup and a really great album. And I asked Royna when I talked to him last year, because the new album had come out, and I was like, do you intentionally like set out to do double albums all the time? And he's like, no, it just kind of turns out that way. We got all this material, and then it starts to take on a concept, and before you know it, we've got like 90 minutes worth of music, and there you have it. So it doesn't always the genesis is not always there, but there are just some bands that man, they go into the studio and the creative juices are flowing. So
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right? To have that much material and able to say, okay, what are we leaving out, if any?
cool, good choice. Sean, back to you.
I'm going to go for an instrumental group from the 90s that had a string of albums and still are at it to some degree. And I think their most recent album was maybe 3 years ago. I always wonder if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but Jam Carrey, Gail Ellett and his team. There's a tune called The Devouring, which it almost looks like a Grateful Dead cover with the skeletons on the cover and stuff, but it's far cry from Grateful Dead. And it had a tune on there called Night of the Mexican Goat Sucker, Chupacabra.
Chupacabra.
And that's one of my favorite instrumentals from them. So yeah, really dig them, and they kind of fly under the radar. They don't have quite as high profile as a lot of these groups we talked about today, but they're great. And I saw them at Prog Day, and they blew me away. And Nearfest as well.
Yeah.
Were you there that year? That
I was
was the first time I went to 2001. I remember they opened Bird Songs of the Mesozoic opened that weekend, and then Jam Carrey was next with their bass player Aaron with his socks hiked up to his knees and stuff, jumping around. He was great. So yeah, I think that's my five anyway. I mean, I've got some others if we have time to talk about. There it is. There it
you
is.
go.
Right, that ain't no fire on the mountain there, buddy. A different kind of fire.
Yeah, I met Gail Elliott. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, great guitar player and arranger.
Yeah, he and I have communicated quite a bit over the years, and we always cover their albums on the Sea of Tranquility website. And yeah, really different band. I mean, their music is so eclectic. It's like, one song they'll hit you with like this crunchy guitar, and then this like these great analog keyboards, and then the next song is kind of like space rock, kind of just, you never know what direction they're going to go into from song to song, and certainly not album to album. And I think that's why people love them so much, because they kind of always keep you anticipating something, and you're never sure what you're going to get from them, but you're never disappointed, right?
Yeah,
Burning the Hard City just kills.
great one. A night, what was it? Night of Baku or Night for Baku or something like that. That's another really cool one.
A lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. This is pick number 5, right? We're on number 5. Is that?
Yeah, I think that was my
4.
I lost track.
Yeah, I think so.
I
right?
believe I think that was 4.
Was it 4?
Okay, well, whatever. Hey,
Oh, I think it was. You're right, because I didn't. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're on 4. I got one more left.
We've been talking so much. I'm like, all right, I don't even know what number we're on. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's circle back to Magna Carta Records. So this band, and I know everybody watching, as soon as I mention this band's name, I'm going to get like 20 people saying, Pete, when are you going to do a ranking the album show on this band? We've been asking for like 2 years. I'm like, I know, I'll get to it. The band is Shadow Gallery, Carved in Stone. So this is a band, I believe they're from Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly, and progressive metal, but maybe not quite as heavy as Dream Theater, very symphonic, great singer. May he rest in peace. He's no longer with us.
Mike Baker.
Yeah. And just, again, great musicianship. This was probably, I think, out of all the bands that were on the Magna Carta label, probably the one that consistently kind of floated in and out of what we would call prog metal, but great melodies, great vocals, killer guitars and keyboards. every song that they ever released was really, really good. And they haven't done anything in quite a while. Obviously, he's no longer with us, but I was always kind of hoping. And the band never played live other than like a show or two here or there. They were not a touring band, which, a lot of these Magna Carta bands were basically studio creations. They did not go play live, including these guys. But man, one great album after another. And I think, when we talk about those killer progressive metal bands from the 90s and the early 2000s, these guys tend to get overlooked, but they've got a really good discography. Every album is very strong. And Carved in Stone by Shadow Gallery, that is my choice for this pick here. Let me just see if I can get you a picture of the band. There they are. This was, what year did this come out? This was 1995, actually. So right in the middle of the decade. This was, I think, their second album, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. They're from Lehigh Valley, right in the same area as Eklund. They must know each other.
Yeah, they're all from the Nearfest area. Well, yeah.
I can't imagine them not knowing each other.
Yeah, well, in fact, I remember correctly, there was one Nearfest where it was rumored, because I was there, representing Sea of Tranquility, and we were interviewing a lot of the bands and all this kind of stuff. It may have even been the time I interviewed the Echoing guys there, and someone mentioned, it's like, oh, by the way, don't tell anybody, but the couple of guys from Shadow Gallery are coming to the show. And they actually did show up. They didn't play. They just kind of showed up to hang out. And I don't remember what year that was. It had to have been like 2003 or 4 or something like that. It was one of the first like 4 or 5 years, because I went to the first 7 years of that festival, and never forget. Just wonderful times.
I wish I
Yeah, I
went
don't
to one
think
of
they
those.
came out to California. I'm sorry.
No, I just said I always heard about the Neil Morris Fest. I wish I'd been a part of it.
Oh,
The
Neil
only
Morris.
part-
This is something different. This is called Nearfest, Northeast
Oh.
Art Rock Festival. Totally
Oh, okay.
different. Yeah, this was
Oh, okay.
this ran from 1999 through 2010, I believe. Was that the last
I
one?
want to say 2012. We skipped a year
2012?
there.
Yeah.
And it was a very eclectic festival where it was like, usually it'd start on Friday night with a couple bands, either downtown or, remember what we saw a lot of shows kind of downtown Trenton and other places. Did you go to some of those?
Yep.
Seeing Dr. Nerve and Manring and some other people.
Myriador. Do you remember Myriador played?
Yeah, there was. I was standing right in front of there. Yeah. And so it's a very eclectic festival. It was, it's like you get 10 bands over the weekend, and they were all different. They were from all parts of the world, and I went originally just kind of, oh, I want to hear that band, and then suddenly it's like, wow, I didn't know about these other ones. It's like a musical sampler plate that you just feast on all weekend.
Yeah, I went to UK last year or the year before, sorry, 2019, and to see Uriah Heep play with Vintage Caravan on a Friday night, and this is supposed to be a hard rock / prog festival, and then the second day with Pineapple Thief, Gong, Hawkwind members. They put a band similar to Hawkwind, and there was a few other bands, but that was my only prog rock festival I've been. I mean, I've been to Woodstock 94, I've been to many concerts, but I never saw where I went for one band and I got to see a bunch of others that was introduced I never saw before, and I was blown away. I would love to go to one of those festivals.
Oh, you would have loved Nearfest. Yeah.
Oh, I would.
And sometimes that's the best way to be introduced to a band, just cold, live in your face, ripping your face off. It's like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm in the vendor room. I'm buying them all.
Yeah, I would think, most of those years, those festivals at Nearfest, half the lineup I was not familiar with. And then after you see the show, you if you liked them, you went and bought some of the CDs because they were there, hawking their merch and whatnot. And it's just a great way to discover new bands. And of course, they would have like a big headliner for each night. So you get like a Nectar or a Keith Emerson or a Steve Hackett or a Camel or whatever. Yeah. But for the most part, you had a Japanese band, you had a band from Hungary, you had a band from the UK, from Italy, Bonko played, PFM played. I mean, you got some heavy hitters from the 70s, but a lot of newer bands that, ordinarily you would never get exposed to. So
that Sunday morning slot was kind of what I called the wake up bomb set.
Everybody's hungover, right? Sunday morning,
like Kenji Hockey come out and just rip your face off, and you'd be like, I'm awake now. All right, what's for lunch? Food truck? No, let's go downtown.
Yeah, exactly. Good times.
All right.
Rand's on the move again. It's your turn.
Right.
Every time Jesus,
Was that
I
box
grabbed the-
set in the basement?
I grabbed the wrong CD, but I guess that's okay. That's what happened. when
Rand
you're
is
in a
ever
hurry.
on the hunt for the props. See that? Got
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Remember, I was, never mind. But anyways, well, can I say something real quick about Roderick Tentacles without being the choice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were down in San Francisco at a place called the Kennel Club, and they shut that down right after they played. Same thing happened when IQ played this San Jose Cabaret. I don't know what it is. I go to a concert, then there's no more. It's happened twice. But Become the Other is my favorite Ozzy Tentacles album. And the main reason is because there's no reggae on it. Not a big fan of reggae. It's the only one that doesn't have reggae.
Well, you're no pothead, Rand.
Yeah, well, I was, but never mind. But anyways, what I chose was this band from Sweden, because Engelgard had like opened the door. It's like, well, if they can do it, maybe we can do it. And this other band that probably know, I'm sure, Anecdoten,
Oh yeah, Biggie.
VMod, I bought from Greg Walker the night we were talking to IQ in the lobby, and he's yelling like a carnival barker, "Hey man, you got to get this Anecdote, and it's awesome. It's better than Engelgard. You'll love it." And it's like, what? That's a challenge.
I'd say
So-
it's in that ballpark.
Yeah, definitely. And the second album, Nucleus, is the one I bought first. Oh my God.
Yeah, Nucleus is great.
The Rickenbacker bass on that album is that's one of the reasons I bought one. I wanted that sound so bad. But
Rickenbacker.
yeah, Nucleus is like their relayer, huh?
Rickenbackers and Mellotron. I mean, hey, I'm in.
Yeah, got one. Got both. Never mind the Mini Moog Voyager. But anyway, yeah, Rick, I was going to tell you we should hook up after this, and I could send you
Sure.
some of my recordings on my Mellotron
Right on. That'd be
and
awesome.
my synthesizer. I'm easy to find. It's Rand Kelly on YouTube. It's the only one without hair. Everybody else has hair because there's more
Depends
than
on
one
where you're
Rand
looking.
Kelly. But yeah, Anecdote. And I don't know much about this album, Bimod. I've had it, I bought it from Greg. Greg Walker's the guy that turned me on to the Flower Kings. I called him up and I go, man, I don't know what to buy. I need something progressive. You got any recommendations? Oh, dude, you got to get into the Flower Kings. They're awesome. I suggest Retropolis. I said, really? So I did that. Anyways, my turn's over. Go ahead.
Back to you, Rick.
Okay. Wow. I gotta go with my hero. I'm gonna go with this band, all instrumentals, super group Liquid Tension Experiment. And they got a new one coming out at the end of this month, I believe it is. Which is great. It's exciting that that Mike and John are together and playing music. I was already on cloud nine when I heard that he was called to help John do his solo album, which you guys got to get. It's fantastic if you don't have it already.
Yeah.
Oh, got them all.
Yeah, right on. So anyway, I like this because it's like I don't know what it is, but I drive faster if I have this in my car. So I have to listen to this at home. It's
That
one
album
of
is
those things-
relentless. It's relentless.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're just taken off on their instruments and so well, yet they gel and it come together and then they go off and then they come together. I just find it fantastic listening. It's a great thing to do when you want to be motivated to do chores around the house. Put on that thing and you get into it. And it's just one of those. Go to show you how talented these guys are, that you can listen to an album with no vocal and dig it. I mean, it's almost lyrical in their own presentation, the way they do this stuff. Now, I like the other albums as they come out. They really got the knack for this. I can imagine what the next album, everything I heard so far is fantastic that I heard on the new release. But this was an album that I was just really impressed because, see, I like Jeff Beck instrumental albums like Blow by Blow and
Love it.
Wired, and I love that stuff, right? And I love fusion. So when they want to just take off and jam for a while and don't tell us what's going on lyrically, it's okay by me because music is what feelings sound like, and they had a ball. You could tell that they really were, bringing everything to the table to show off. They definitely could show that they were more than just songwriters. They can jam and they can, really play. So I just thought to give them a little love because it's 98, I believe it is. And they had another one the following year. So let me see, yes, 98. And again, but they did take this on the road. Like Pete said, many of the albums that come out of this label, it's just a studio thing, but they did play this live. Well, I believe the second one they promoted and with New York, and there's another concert out there I have that, it's worth checking out.
Yeah,
But anyway,
I saw him in New York City. It was pretty mind blowing.
you had that DVD that I have?
Well, I saw them. I don't think I have the DVD, but I saw them in New York
Oh.
City. It was
Oh,
crazy.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And who opened up for them? Like, did they just themselves?
No, it was like some local like prog band that I never heard of and haven't heard from since. Yeah, they were pretty good, but it was all about Liquid Tension Experiment. And the show that I saw was years after they did like a special tour, like 5 years after they released the second album, I think.
Yes, right.
The tour. That's when I saw them.
Oh, cool. And then they do have a third album without John because he was too busy. If you want to check that out, but anyway. I just want to, for those out there who don't know what this is about, and you love your drums, you love your guitars, you love your bass, you love your keyboards, this is the album. And it's another fine mix by Kevin Shirley, who's already developed a lot of relationship with individual in Dream Theater. It's interesting to see, but this was pretty much the seed for this was a good experience. And when they were thinking about making some changes in Dream Theater, I'm sure the memory of this and the second album brought them into the fold. And I'm glad in a way they did. I mean, I like Derek, don't get me wrong. I think Derek is awesome. So I have mixed emotions about that, but I do want to say that, Jordan made this happen. So I'm thankful for that because it is still my favorite Dream Theater album.
Right.
But anyway, this goes to show you that these guys can play. And not only that, it goes to show you that you can be tasteful, musical, and keep everybody's interest.
I'd like to point out that there's kind of a direct line when it comes to instrumental guitar-driven music, from Jeff Beck's 70s stuff right into Steve Morse and the Dixie Dregs in the late 70s, into Steve Morse's Trio. As a matter of fact, if you've never heard an album by the Steve Morse Band called Coast to Coast, check it out. First song will remind you of Liquid Tension's Experiment the minute you hear it.
Yep.
So,
I don't have that one. Thank you.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah,
Great
just
album.
the opening tune, you could tell Petrucci was digging some Morse and kind of went in that direction. And also Al Di
Thank you.
Meola, I'd say Al Di Meola is another biggie when it comes to these muscular riffs and shredding kind of stuff. So any Al Di Meola, Elegant Gypsy, Land of the Midnight Sun, Casino,
Mhm.
those are all essential if you're into
Thank you, Sean.
muscular instrumental stuff. Yeah, I think you'll hear it all kind of blended into Liquid Tension Experiment. Yeah.
Cool.
So I got one more, don't I? Let's see here. Well, I have a few to choose from. I think I'm going to go with Stupid Dream from Porcupine Tree. I think it's important to bring Steven Wilson up sooner or later.
Yep.
He's all the buzz these days with his new album. But for my money, I prefer some of the older stuff. And I see Porcupine Tree as having a few different phases. They're very early ambient stuff where he was basically the band himself. And then Signify, Stupid Dream, and Lightbulb Sun, I think, kind of hang together as the next era. And that stuff's more acoustic driven and more of a pop underpinning to it. And then, In Absentia, Deadwing, and Fear of a Blank Planet are kind of like his more metallic inspired riffy kind of era of Porcupine Tree, which bleeds right into his solo work that he did, with some of his solo albums. But I really, it's funny, for the last couple albums, the big buzz about him is, he's gone pop. And it's like, didn't you guys hear Piano Lessons back in the 90s? I mean, this isn't the first time he's written this. And it's like, oh, I'm doing something different this time. Well, I don't know. It all just sounds like Steven Wilson music to me. There's a thread that ties everything together right up to his newest album. And when I hear it, I just, it's like, well, it's kind of like a new frame for the same picture. is how I kind of hear it.
He's had nice pop stuff on every single album, even those
Yeah,
heavy Porcupine Tree
I
albums.
think that's some of his best stuff, actually. Some of my favorite stuff. Yeah.
I've always gotten the impression, Sean, that that's really what was Steven Wilson at his essence. And all these other things are like, stuff he kind of likes to do every now and then. But I think he, deep down inside, he's a pop guy. I think
He is, and I never really thought of him as the big savior to progressive rock that a lot of people do. I don't think he's ever was intended to be that, for starters.
he's not comfortable in those
I think he
shoes.
just got carried away and that audience embraced him. And who's going to say no to an audience? I mean, especially when you're an up and coming artist, you don't pick your fans. You're just glad to have some.
Yeah.
And, all these years later, it's like, oh, you're prog. I don't know. I never really thought of him that way. And the pop stuff, like on the new album, he's got a song called The 12 Things I Forgot. And I think that may be one of my favorite songs on it, just because it's almost like Lazarus or one of those kind of ballads where it's all acoustic strummy stuff. And yeah, I just think at his simplest, sometimes that's some of my favorite stuff he does.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. We talked earlier about some of like the main bands that kind of were kind of breaking a little bit in the 90s. Porcupine Tree also is in that category, along with Spock's Beard, the Flower Kings, and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't hear him until In Absentia, so I had no idea what was going on at all before that.
I think Signify was really the first album that started to get them noticed. Although I love The Sky Moves Sideways, which I think is an awesome kind of psychedelic space rock album. But nobody was buying that sort of stuff at the time. But Signify all of a sudden had this kind of sound that people were like, "Ooh, that's kind of catchy. There's some really good melodies there." But it's kind of there's like a darkness to that album too. I think that also caught people's attention too.
The keyboard player from Visible Wind gave me that CD.
Signify.
He was staying at The Sky Moves Sideways. Yeah, Stefan Gazens, Visible Wind's keyboard player. He came and stayed with me in Fortuna for a week as he was coming back from Baja Prague. You talk weird. I didn't know this guy from Adam, and I was talking to a friend that knew him, a girl, and she said, "He's coming up. He wants to visit you." And I go, "Okay." So he came up and he stayed at my house for a week. We actually did a little CD together that it's not very good, but he did turn it from a cassette tape into a CD, me playing fretless bass and drums on my keyboard. And he was playing flute and classical guitar. Very good musician. But yeah, I don't even know why I'm talking about this now. But
maybe that album by Porcupine Tree.
Right. I forgot about it. See, I'm 68. You guys are young, I'm an old man. I've been around a long time. I saw the Lamb live, so there you go.
Well, 70's the new 50, Rand. So hang
with
on.
Peter Gabriel. I was going to say, Liquid Tension Experiment almost broke the record just broke the record for making us wait for a new album 2 years longer than Peter Gabriel.
It did take quite a while.
Yeah, quite a long time.
And we may never get anything more from Peter Gabriel.
I don't know. I was chatting with Tony Levin not long ago, and he says, I said, anything? And he's like, well, I've played on a few things, so maybe eventually,
Awesome.
We'll see.
He's my favorite singer. I love Peter Gabriel. He could do no wrong.
Peter's the man. He is.
He can't do any wrong, but he could work a little quicker.
Yeah, right. All right, last choice of the day here for us. And I'm going to go back to Magna Carta one more time today, because again, I was a lot of Magna Carta stuff back in the 90s. And this is another band who also played at Nearfest. This band, I think, out of all the Magna Carta bands, probably had that pop sensibility that I think a lot of people really like. They weren't as heavy as some of the other bands. They weren't as bombastic and symphonic as some of the other bands, but they kind of had both their feet into a lot of these different camps. I'm talking about Enchant, A Blueprint of the World. All right. And these guys were very melodic, very catchy. The vibe I always got from Enchant is they reminded me a little bit of like early mid 80s Rush. It's like the nice guitar textures, not a lot of solos and back and forth between the keys and the guitars, and really nice vocal layers, really good melodies, not too heavy, not too proggy, but a little bit of both. And for me, this is their best album still. And it was produced by Stephen Rothery of Marillion, of course. And I just always really liked this. And this was probably one of the biggest sellers on the Magna Carta label, at least early on. So there was a good amount of buzz about these guys early on, but and a really nice bunch of guys too, I might say. But so that's my final choice. Another Magna Carta, Enchant, A Blueprint of the World.
That is
They
down
opened
right.
for IQ at the San Jose Cabaret that night. We were talking to IQ. We were missing Enchant. That's just something you don't do unless there's an important reason. But just to get to talk to IQ was just like so rare. You know, like when is this going to happen again? Never.
Never.
You know.
Never.
And those guys were fantastic. But you could hear Enchant. They were kicking butt. You know, they're great.
Yeah, really good band, and great vocals, and obviously their lead singer has been fronting Spock's Beard for the last bunch of years, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Ted Leonard, right? So
He gets around.
yeah, he does. He does. So there you have it, everybody. Some picks of some of our favorite albums from some cool bands who kind of popped up in the 90s and really helped bring progressive music, progressive rock, progressive metal somewhat back into the public eye. I mean, is it ever going to be mainstream again? Probably not, but that's okay. We love it no matter how many people are listening to it. The important thing is we're listening to it, right? We listened to it then, we're listening to it now. That's never going to change. So I want to thank everybody here on the panel. Mr. Rand Kelly, Mr. Rick LeBon, Mr. Sean Tonar. Thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate having you guys on. This is a great chat. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube.
All the damn
the damn
time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So tune in for another In the Prog Seat next week. We got another crew coming in for that one, and hopefully we'll see these guys again over the coming weeks and months. So we like to bring everybody back on In the Prog Seat. So stay tuned next
love
Tuesday.
to.
Don't forget, guys, tomorrow night we've got Barry Goodrow, formerly of Boston, on the show tomorrow. So stay tuned
Neat.
for that.
Ryan the Hunter.
Very cool.
Boston and Ryan
RTZ.
Hunter, yeah. So very looking forward to talking to Barry and kind of seeing what he's been up to all these years. So stay tuned for that tomorrow, and all sorts of other things coming up this week. For Rand, for Rick, and for Sean, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks, Pete.
everybody. Take care.